Greetings! In the last video, we looked at how sexual cell division, or meiosis, produces 4 completely unique daughter cells from one parent cell. In the next 2 videos, we're going to look at how those daughter cells then become sperm or eggs or oocytes. And we're going to start this one with the process of sperm production. So these are our 4 unique daughter cells formed by meiosis. Each one has half the number of chromosomes of an ordinary body cell. And that's because when this daughter cell, whether it's sperm or egg, meets with the other sperm or egg, we want the total number of chromosomes to add up to the right number for our body cells. Now, the other thing that you can see here is that they are completely unique. So while they each have the same amount of DNA, they each have a different color, and the color represents whether that DNA originally came from this person's mother or father. So this one has a chromosome that is all blue. This one has a chromosome that's all red. So each one of those came from a different parent. These 2 daughter cells have a chromosome that's mostly red with a little blue and mostly blue with a little red. This is left over from that process of cell division where in metaphase, or the phase where the chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell, while they're sitting there, they decide to swap DNA. And that helps to generate even more diversity. Okay, so all of that was to produce either sperm or eggs. And while they divide in the very same way in terms of how they split the DNA and how they mix it up a little bit, so the meiosis part is the same, after that, it's completely different. It's not just how they develop. Obviously, it's different if we've got these 2 different sizes, but when they develop, that's very different. And yet, they're both controlled by the same hormones. Okay, so let's take a look at sperm. Sperm travel light. They are basically just a traveling nucleus. They've got the DNA packaged in a little membrane, and their only job is to deliver that to the egg. They don't want any other fancy stuff. They're not planning for any other emergencies. To be able to do this, they have to make a number of changes. They save their nucleus with the DNA, obviously, but they basically get rid of everything else that they can, all the other organelles of the cell. They develop a membrane specialization known as a flagellum, which is like a tail, and it spins like a propeller, a very long propeller, but a propeller nonetheless. Now, spinning this propeller takes energy, and so in this midsection of the sperm, there are a whole bunch of mitochondria. That is an organelle that has the ability to take glucose and oxygen from the external environment and convert it into something called ATP, which will actually power the molecular machinery that spins the tail around. Finally, sperm develop an acrosome, which the way I've drawn this looks like this little guy's mustache, and now he's wearing a cute little red cap. That's not actually how they look in real life, but the acrosome is another membrane-bound vesicle, but this one is filled with digestive enzymes. Now, not digestive because the sperm is hungry and it needs to eat along the way, but digestive because the egg, when they meet it, is surrounded by several barriers. Which require enzymes for the sperm to be able to digest their way through to the membrane of the egg. Okay, so let's look at what happens here. We've got our parent cell that gave us initially 2 daughter cells. Those 2 daughter cells became 4 daughter cells. And now we're going to look at how these change to become sperm. Now, what you see in front of you is happening, starts in puberty and ends in what's called andropause. This is when sperm and testosterone production naturally decline as those with testes become older. Now, sperm maturation also takes place in this time. is where these daughter cells develop those characteristics I was talking about. So here we have grown a flagellum and we've gotten rid of most of the organelles. Here we've put the mitochondria in the midsection and added acrosomes, and voila, we have created sperm. This process, just like the cell division that produced it, occurs through the entire reproductive period of an adult male's life. Now, how is this controlled? How do we know when we need more sperm and when we don't? It comes back to something we've seen before, which is this relationship between the gonads, the testes and the ovaries, and these primitive structures in the brain called the hypothalamus and the pituitary. And they kind of make a link between the nervous system and the endocrine system. They have a foot in both of those teams. So the hypothalamus in the pituitary secretes something called GnRH, or gonadotropin releasing hormone. And that hormone travels right next door to the pituitary. When the pituitary receives that hormone, it then secretes two hormones in response. One of those is called FSH, or follicle stimulating hormone. We're going to see the word follicle again as we talk about this. And follicle stimulating hormone targets the seminiferous tubules, which is the location where sperm form. So FSH travels through the bloodstream, gets to the testes, and the cells that make up the seminiferous tubules receive that, and they're going to respond. They respond by producing sperm. So they're going through that whole meiosis, cell division, and then maturing the sperm so that they are ready to be released. Actually, of course, they go to the epididymis first, where they hang out, get mature, and are stored till we use them. But in any case, this is when the seminiferous tubules are full, they secrete a hormone called inhibin. Here it is written out, which, as you might judge from the name, inhibits the pituitary from producing more FSH. It's really a way of saying to the pituitary, hey, we're kind of full down here, so maybe don't tell us to keep making more. We got nowhere to put this stuff. Now, this can be the situation for a while. The sperm can just sit there for a while, but at some point, if ejaculation hasn't occurred to release those sperm, then generally what will happen is what's called nocturnal emission. This is when an erection and ejaculation occur during sleep, releasing the ejaculate and allowing the testes to make a fresh batch of sperm. Okay. So inhibit normally says to the pituitary, stop making FSH, and then it sits there until we release the sperm. Okay, now the other thing that's produced by the pituitary is called luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is produced by the pituitary, received by these cells called the interstitial cells. That means they're in between the seminiferous tubules. They also are sometimes called Leydig cells. Now, when luteinizing hormone arrives there, then these interstitial or Leydig cells produce testosterone. So testosterone production and sperm production are separate, and this is kind of important because you don't want your testosterone levels to change every time you ejaculate, or don't. So they have to be regulated separately so that testosterone can be kept at a more even concentration. Now, testosterone targets lots of organs all around the body, and we've talked about some of those effects. We don't have time to talk about all of them, but it has a wide area of activity. But the main thing we want to focus on here is what controls the level of it. So in addition to all the other things that testosterone does, it also goes back to the pituitary. And as the pituitary senses that the testosterone level is increasing, the pituitary is like, you know what? I think I'll make less LH because we've got enough testosterone out there. So the pituitary stimulates the production of testosterone, and it knows when to stop stimulating based on the amount of testosterone that is secreting. This is a little different from how we saw FSH stimulating sperm production, and then the seminiferous tubules producing inhibin in order to get it to stop. If the sperm production were like testosterone secretion, the sperm would have to swim to the brain to let the brain know that there's plenty of sperm in the testes. And that gets a little bit awkward, biologically, primarily. Okay, so no more LH means the testosterone production stops temporarily until it drops to a level where we have to turn it back on again. And I just had to include this cartoon because it makes me laugh every time. Sperm production is constant through from puberty to andropause, and it is occasionally ejaculated whether you want it to be or not. Here, the doctor is saying, I take it you haven't had sex for a while because the normal sperm have, because they look like tadpoles, started to turn into frogs. Just want to let you know that's not actually what happens. We do make sure there's a fresh batch available periodically. So sperm production typically stops when the epididymis is full. It is renewed or increases again after ejaculation. And if needed, then there will be nocturnal emission to make sure that we are making a fresh batch.